On December 1, 1949, Pablo Emilio Escobar was born in Rio Negro, Antioquia. He was raised in the nearby city of Medellin as the third of 7 children. His mother was a teacher, and his father was a modest farmer. Despite coming from a lowly background, Pablo Escobar rose to become the head of the Medellin cartel, which controlled 80% of the world's cocaine trade. At the time, he was known as the King of Cocaine. Even though Escobar was one of the most notorious kingpins in history, he was a devout family man. In 1976, Escobar married Maria Victoria Henao, who was 15 years old, and together they had 2 children, a boy named Sebastian Marroquin and a girl named Manuela. Today, Sebastian Marroquin works as a motivational speaker, and in the majority of his talks, he describes what it was like growing up with the most famous drug lord in history. So how was the legend of Pablo Escobar remembered? Today, we will look at the roller coaster life of the wealthiest criminal that ever existed. From how he dreamt of being one day President of Colombia, his rise to power, and being the biggest distributor of cocaine the world has ever seen. When he was younger, Pablo was driven and ambitious, telling his friends and family that he intended to one day be the President of Colombia. Escobar had a singular goal to rise beyond his lowly roots from a young age. However, because his family couldn't afford to support him through his schooling, he was compelled to leave school. Dropping out of school was the step that resulted in his eventual rise to being the biggest drug lord and crime boss in history. Now you might be wondering, what crimes did he commit at such an early age? He and his brother would break into cemeteries and steal headstones, sanding the names off so they could sell them as brand new grave markers. To supplement their meager income, they committed other small-time crimes. Moreover, he started working for a smuggler, and by the age of 22, he had earned his first $1 million. This is the time he started being heartless. In 1975, Escobar ordered the killing of Fabio Restrepo, the most notorious drug lord in Medellin. Escobar was then arrested, but the charges were dropped after he gave the order to kill all the arresting police officers. Due to this, he immediately caused fear in the general public. Nevertheless, Pablo Escobar went to prison and turned himself in rather than being chased into a closed-off alley and thrown shackled into the back of a police car. Who would have guessed it? Although choosing to go to prison might seem strange, it wasn't your typical imprisonment. It was an extraordinary prison equipped with a sauna, a pool, a dance hall, a pool room, and a sports court. Under Escobar's direction, large quantities of coca paste were procured in Bolivia and Peru, processed and shipped to America. And with the help of a small crew, Escobar established the notorious Medellin cartel. According to Forbes, Escobar was one of the world's top 10 wealthiest persons by the middle of the 1980s, with an estimated net worth of $30 billion. He bought a Learjet to fly his money because cash was so common. The Medellin cartel, which Escobar controlled more than 80% of, made up to $420 million per week through smuggling more than 15 tons of cocaine into the United States. But Pablo Escobar had more ambitions than simply dominating the cocaine market. Pablo Escobar briefly served in the Colombian Congress as a congressman. However, as news of his former drug trafficking arrest became widely known, his congressional career was ended. He intended to join the government so that he might benefit from parliamentary immunity and be protected. Pablo's main goal was to prevent Colombia's government from signing an extradition agreement with the United States. Nevertheless, despite being viewed as an enemy of the Colombian and American governments, he successfully fostered goodwill among the underprivileged. In Western Colombia, he helped to build hospitals, schools, and churches. He was well liked by the local Roman Catholics, and the people of Medellin frequently assisted and shielded him, even hiding him from the police. His business grew to such a size that other drug traffickers agreed to provide him 20% to 35% of their profits in exchange for the smooth delivery of their cocaine to the United States. With all this, you might be wondering how Pablo Escobar's lifestyle was and how he spent all the money he earned from drug trafficking. Interestingly, Escobar bought 4 hippopotami and kept them in his lavish estate's Shady Zoo in Colombia. The expansive castle of Pablo Escobar also housed elephants, giraffes, kangaroos, and other exotic creatures. This private zoo of illegally imported animals was the most extravagant display of the feared drug lord while he ruled over the Colombian cocaine trade. Moreover, the drug lord lived in Hacienda Naples, a primary estate measuring 20 square kilometers, located 249 kilometers northwest of Pagoda and 150 kilometers east of Medellin. This home wasn't your typical estate because it also featured a private airport, a bowling alley, and even a kart racing track. He also went and bought an entire island, Normandy Island. It served as the main center of his operations. The island offered its residents various options to unwind during their free time, including access to its hotel, nightclub, swimming pool, private dock, and numerous stunning sandy beaches. Pablo also used his money to throw some of the craziest parties Colombia had to offer. Escobar's extravagant parties attracted many of Colombia's top politicians, police officers, and celebrities because they were so outrageous. He also hosted events for his children. And what about his car collection? Between the 1970s and 1990s, Toyota Land Cruisers, often known as narco-Toyotas, were particularly common in the drug trade. It was usual to see a large group of them traveling in a convoy through the muddy streets of Colombia, making it easier to locate authorities. Nevertheless, his most luxurious car in his collection is the Mercedes-Benz S600 Pullman. This design was particularly well-liked by tyrants and was suitable for Mr. Escobar. There were over 40 sports vehicles discovered in one of Pablo Escobar's houses. Most of them were destroyed by rival cartels and would be worth tens of millions of dollars today. He also owned the RSR, the 300 SL Mercedes, and a Lamborghini Element 002. And that's not all. Pablo Escobar had an MK 3669 X-Jet, a favorite of Escobar's cartel to make his risky journeys more worthwhile and to have the capacity to carry more kilograms of cocaine. He had a large fleet of expensive aircraft, including multiple TBM 700s that cost $1.3 million each and a DC-3 that cost $200,000. Interestingly, he also had a tiny fleet of military planes which he used to speed up operations and gave his unlawful business a more secretive aspect. Surprisingly, one of the wackiest tales about him and his fortune is that he once burned $2 million because his daughter was cold. Moreover, Sebastian Marroquin, his son, told Don Juan magazine that Escobar would frequently blindfold his family, put them in a car, and travel to a new hiding place when they were evading federal agents. In this manner, if his relatives were arrested, they couldn't divulge his location. Let's say Escobar's greatest fear was imagining that he would spend the rest of his days imprisoned in an American prison. But like all great stories, there was an end to famous kingpin's tyranny. Sadly, Pablo Escobar passed away at the age of 44. After an unsuccessful attempt to run away, Escobar and his bodyguard were shot on December 2, 1993. And now you might be wondering, where did all of Pablo Escobar's money go after his death? Despite his best efforts, Escobar could not spend the entire amount of money. Much of it was kept in fields and warehouses. His brother claimed that every year 10% or $2.1 billion was lost due to being eaten by rats or being destroyed by the environment. Sometimes it was just misplaced. I'm not quite sure how you can misplace a couple $100 million. The sad part is I don't think I ever will have that luxury. Today, more and more of Pablo Escobar's money from drug trafficking is being discovered. The Colombian authorities eventually acquired a sizable sum of the drug lord's money, but not all of it. Moreover, the authorities made his family sign up for any liquid assets they may have had. They also seized cash that it was able to link to his close friends. On the other hand, his rivals also stole several of his belongings and funds. Some drug lords' cartel members plundered the remaining funds for their benefit. After their leader's passing, they wanted to maintain their financial security. His immediate family survived on the little money left after he passed away. Whether you see it as a success story or documenting the life of the evil tyrant, Pablo Escobar's story will go down in history as one of the great rise and falls of all time. You still hear stories to this day about local Colombian farmers digging through their fields and finding barrels of cash buried there courtesy of Mr. Escobar. To amass that kind of wealth from his humble upbringing is nothing short of incredible, but unfortunately those who live by the sword ultimately, well, you know how the rest goes. From one billionaire to the next, we'll see what the next one has to offer.